This is going to be the sixth video in the series of video tutorials for our target application. It is also the beginning, the first one in stage 3. And I'm reminding you that these videos are recorded sometime in the summer of 2026, before the fall. And by the time we learn this in class, there might be a new version, so there might be a conflict between these videos and the guide, and whenever there is, the written guide will be updated more often. So hopefully there won't be any conflicts, but if there are, written guide. Before we start interaction scripts, which is what stage 3 is mostly all about, we need to enable input. To enable input, this is something that has to do with this event system. We have to tell it to be ready for let's say external devices. For instance, if it's going to be VR, it's going to be like the headset controllers. But for this application, we're going to use what's called the older system, which is for interaction with keys on, let's say, a laptop. So here's how we do that. We go to Edit, Project Settings, Player, Other Settings. Edit, Project Settings, Category Player. We make sure that we're in the Mac PC standalone, and in the category Other Settings, we're going to scroll down, down quite a lot, until we find something called, here it is, I just found it, Active Input Handling, and it says Input System Package New. We're going to change it to either the old one or both. Either one will be cool. Let's do both. When I change it to both, it'll require a restart, which I will. Hopefully it won't take that long. So in the instructions, it says Input Manager Old, but it also later on says that either old or both, as long as it includes the what's called the legacy Input Manager, which is way better and easier for keyboard interaction. And if it gives you this project uses Input Manager, you just ignore that. Clear. And save. And save. Without this, we cannot script the keyboard interaction. Yeah, so it will restart your project, so either old or both is good. Finally, or let's get, to start with, let's start the actual steps. In the scene, we're going to create an empty game object, and its name is going to be MyGameManager. The actual name of the object, as always, is just a suggestion. But later on, what's going to be in the script, it's basically a parent for the script. Now, my game manager, you see how in the hierarchy is the last one? I personally prefer to put it drag it at the top, as long as you're careful not to drag it to be a child of anything. It's also, since it will have no visuals, it's not really important, but still, as a matter of good habit, I always reset its position. What's going to be the whole point of the game manager? The game manager is going to be the parent or the container for the script called MyGameManager, which we already created. So you're going to go to D2L, to this module, the one that holds stage number 3. Usually it's module number 7. And you're going to find the script called Code for MyGameManager. Highlight and copy all of it. I already have that window open. And as you can see, it's in module 7, target. And here it is, a section called Codes to Copy Paste. Code for My Game Manager, click, and then I'm going to carefully start from before the first, comment or line, and start dragging down, drag and highlight, drag and highlight, drag and highlight, keep going until end class. That's where you should stop. Then, of course, I will copy, either right click or, use the keyboard shortcut. Then I will go to my project, open scripts, and here is, I need to create a new script, sorry. Create a new script. We haven't created it yet. New script called My Game Manager, making sure that every word starts with a cap because it's going to have to correspond to what it says in the script. My Game Manager. That's going to be like the main script. I'm going to create an ad, and as always, save it into my scripts. But this time, rather than just creating it, I'm going to find it, I'm going to double click on it, and what it should do is open whatever's the default code editor that was installed with Unity when you installed your last version of Unity. For me, it's Visual Studio, what's called the community version for Mac. It could be Visual Studio Code for newer Macs. It could be anything that was installed on your computer. Usually it's some kind of a Visual Studio. But as long as it's a code editor, it'll work. Because in the end, scripts in C# are nothing but pieces of text. So what I'm going to do is select all the default code that comes with the default script. We will have a separate class about, these two. It's just a shell, the start, the update. I am highlighting, clearing, and finally pasting everything that I copied from the code. If I paste it correctly and the comment called code for Game Manager is the first one, then the last line should be end class, around line 147. The reason I'm saying around is because there's a bunch of empty lines in between, and some code editors skip empty lines or condense empty lines. But as long as the last curly bracket, the last piece of block ends with end class, we're good. Again, as we will discuss in class, every script starts with some libraries, which we call using. We're always going to use the Unity engine. Why? Because C# is used for a bunch of things, but we're telling it, hey, open that chapter in your dictionary for all the objects and methods that are unique to Unity. Also, we need another library within it called Unity UI, which is what we're going to do for populating those texts on the screen, and another Unity engine library called Scene Management, which we will need for reloading and navigating between scenes, like reloading the scene when we run out of bullets. So let's see if we're ready to explain. This video is going to be mostly about explaining the code here. Let's see if there's anything else we need to do. Yep, so open. It'll open in Visual Studio or whatever is your default editor. Delete the original content. Instead, paste what you copied from Game Manager. Save. Make sure the script name matches the class name. If you correctly copied, pasted all the code, last line should be end class. Watch video for explanation of code. This is exactly the video with the explanation of code. Let's start. After those libraries, there's actually, before the script's own public class, which is right here on line 22, My Game Manager, that's the one that has to match the name of the actual file. But before that, we actually have another public class, which is called Application Data. Application Data is a class that is going to be, in other languages, we call it a global or even a constant. It's going to be for objects and variables that can be shared by all the scripts. You're going to see that we're going to end up with 4 of them, and they all need to kind of communicate with each other. So these scripts are the scripts that they can all read and set. For instance, make new bullet. It could be true or false, telling, oh, we need a new bullet or not. We need a new target or not. A float, a number that bool is Boolean, of course, true or false. A float, which is going to have the number of bullets fired. A floating number, which is going to have the number of bullets max, which is, where we decide, oh, they have 10 bullets per round. The number of bullets hit, missed, percentage, and high score. You might ask, why not make these an integer? Because, you cannot fire a bullet and a half. The reason is, they're still going to be basically integers, but in order to calculate percentage, if we divide, for instance, 3 3 bullets hit by 5 bullets fired, we're not going to get a floating number. To get a float, you need to divide a float with a float. So in order to get those decimal fractions, we need all those numbers to start as floats. So those are going to be mentioned quite a lot with the other scripts. Now we start. So this is this block of all the application data. Then the stuff that's unique to this script, the game manager. By the way, mono behavior is the name of the syntax that we're using. We start by declaring a bunch of public fields. Public fields, if I save this and I go back to Unity and I select the game manager, here they are, all the public fields. Public fields that are going to appear in the inspector in Unity. In other words, I'm going to give them their values or their objects and so on in Unity. In the script, I'm just creating them. The game object bullet, or in other words, think of it as directing a play. There's a part called bullet, but I need to hire an actor to play that part. Who's going to play the part of bullet? My bullet container. Who's going to play the part of target? My target container, and so on and so on. The lighting container. There's also the text. I have text for that, but I have to assign them to variables. Who's going to play the part of the variable fired display? The text called fired, which is why later on we're going to drag all those, like here. Let's say fire display is going to be, when we're done, the text fired. I'm going to drag it in. We're going to do all of them at once. After that, we have, after we declare all of our objects, including the game object replay button, which we will need for both assigning it a function, but also for knowing who to turn on and off at the end of each round. Then we have the function start. That's a built-in function in Unity, which means what's going to happen as soon as the game starts. As soon as the game or the scene starts, a lot of initializations. Bullets fired 0. The max bullets is 10. This is, an arbitrary number, but we can make it, more or less. That's the number of bullets per round. We start with 0 bullets hits, 0 bullets missed, and the percentage is 0. And then the fact that we changed those variables, notice all of them are application data. We took them from here. When there are application data variables, we have to say application data bullets fired, so it knows who it belongs to, that it's not a local variable. So after we give those variables their value, now we have to actually put them in the display. So we say %display text, at first it's 0. %message is empty. The high score display, it will be the highest score so far, and we're going to ask application data, what is your high score so far? And obviously it's going to be 0 because we just made it 0. And then before we actually can play the game, we need 1 bullet and 1 target, and that's what instantiate is for. Instantiate means basically take a prefab and put it on the stage. And it needs 3 pieces of information, 3 parameters. What to put on the stage, and that's going to be the object bullet. Where to put it on the stage, see, it's going to put it at the launcher's transform position. That's why it was so important to put the launcher at the right space. So it's going to put it at the launcher. And the third one is rotation. It's going to borrow or copy the launcher's transform rotation. It basically means make me a bullet, put it where the launcher is, and aim it where the launcher is aiming right now, which is right now straightforward. At the same time, we also need a new target. A target, also 3 parameters. Who, where would be a new vector 3. Vector 3 is a construct for X, Y, and Z, for 3 axes. The X is going to be unityengine.random.range. I'm saying, well, I don't know where I'm going to put it from left to right. It's going to be a random in the range of -15 to +15, which is why every time I play, it will instantiate. Let's see if we could do that. Oh, it won't because we haven't populated yet. But this is negative 15, this is positive 15. It will randomly show up somewhere between them. Back to the code. So all of this is the x. The y is 0.5, so it's above the floor. And 7 is the distance. By the way, do you notice those f's? F is for floating number, because vector 3 needs floating numbers. Quaternion identity, I'm always not sure, how to pronounce it. Quaternion identity together is an expression that says it's the rotation, just like here it was the rotation, but Quaternion identity means the rotation of whoever is the parent of that object. Since it has no parent, it's the orientation of the world. Then, so this is going to initialize what we're going to do. Then, update. What update is going to do is constantly update the fields. So about 50 times a second, because it loops, it's going to put the text bullets fired plus, that's called concatenation from application data. Tell me how many bullets were fired, but convert it to a string, because the text is always a string. Concatenated to that the words out of with spaces before and after. Concatenated to that the number of bullets max. So I'll end up with something like bullets fired 1 out of 10 or whatever. Same thing with the hit display. It's going to display how many bullets were hit and ask the application data, hey, how many bullets were hit so far? How will the application data know the bullets were hit? That's going to come from another script in video. It's going to be probably one of the next stages, because bullets hit is only when a target is hit, it will report, I'm hit. Same thing, application data, bullets missed. So how many are we going to miss? The ones we fired minus the ones we hit. If we fired 7 and we hit 5, then we missed 2. And it's going to take that number that we calculated and say, hey, bullets missed, put it here again. ToString is a function that turns numbers into strings. We cannot just put numbers in a text. They have to be converted to a string. The other thing, which is the point of the whole game, is to calculate the percentage of success. What's the percentage of success? How many we hit divided by how many we fired so far. So the first thing we ask is, if application bullets hit bigger than 0, when will it be bigger than 0? After we hit at least 1. Why am I asking that? So I don't want to divide 0 by 0, which is not a good thing in any programming language. So I'm saying, well, if it's bigger than 0, it means already hit 1. There already is something to calculate. So the percentage is going to be bullets hit divided by bullets fired. I hit 2, I fired 4. 2 divided by 4 is half. But I want it to look like percentage. I don't want to say I hit half. I want to say I hit 50%. So the text we're going to put in it is going to have the word percentage. Then I'm going to ask application data, what is your percentage? It's going to say it's half. I'm going to convert it to a string, but with a construct or with a format, P1. P is for percentage, 1 is for 1 decimal. It's going to convert it from 0.5 to 50.0 and even put the percentage sign next to it. What I'm going to do right now, in order to demonstrate that, I'm going to go to the next step, which is to populate, and then I'm going to go back to, what is it, like line 77. It's going to make it much easier. How do I populate all of these so I can actually see the results of what I'm talking about? I'm going to go to Unity and just carefully start dragging things. I'm going to say, okay, who's going to play the bullet? I got a prefab called bullet container. Drag it in. And if I drag the wrong one, I just, drag the right one instead, and it replaces it. Who's going to play the part of the target? Target container. Who's going to play the part of the launcher? That launcher. Lighting, I got my lighting container. And then all the text. Fired. Just make sure that they match. Missed. hit percentage. I'm just making sure that they match. This is like casting a play. I'm basically, like hiring actors, casting actors to play these parts. High score display, the message display, and even the replay button, even though it's disabled, exit is going to have its own function because it does, it's like a standalone. But replay will have to be turned on and off, so I need to, assign it to an object in the script. Now that they're all assigned, I want you to see all the things we talked about so far. If I play, watch all those bullets, ZZZs, and everything we just talked about happened. It instantiated a bullet in, where the launcher is. It instantiated a target randomly between 15 meters to the left and 15 meters to the right. And it populated all those fields with zeros because we just started the game. Stop. Going back to the script. Now it's going to be much easier for me to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Else. What is the else? The opposite of if. If the if was asking if bullets hit were bigger than 0, then else is basically saying it is 0. It's not bigger than 0. So in that case, I'm saying I don't need to ask anyone. I know at the beginning of the game, the percentage is 0, and I'm just putting it into the field percentage. It will convert it to 0.0. Then put the percentage sign next to it. Then I have to ask, if I fired all my bullets, if application data dot bullets fired smaller than bullets max, which means I fired 8 out of 10, I'm still in the game. We're going to listen and to see, do we need a new bullet or not? We're going to ask if application data dot make new bullet true. Who's going to tell it it's true? Because remember, in the beginning, it's false. So who's going to tell it that it changed to true? Either by firing a bullet and missing or firing a bullet and hitting. In both cases, I will need a new bullet. So, I'm on line 92. If something reported told us, for instance, a hit or a miss, that we need a new bullet, first of all, I'm going to say, hey, application data, bullets fired, make that number go up by 1. Because we fired. Then I need 2 cases. If it's smaller than the bullet max, just like I did here, which is, it means not only we're not out of bullets, but it's not the last bullet. In that case, instantiate a new bullet just like before, a bullet at the launcher's position, at the launcher's rotation. And make it false. Why do we make it false? Because we made it true. If we don't make it false, remember this script, all the update repeats 50 times a second. It might have time to generate a bunch of them. Actually, let me show you. When we do this with the other scripts, I'll comment out this line and you'll see that it generates like a burst of them instead of one if I don't turn it false. This is called terminating the loop. Then, in other words, it's going to do that only if it's not the last bullet. If it is the last bullet, the 10th one, I don't need an 11th one. So it's going to generate a new bullet only if it's not the last one. Why do I need both those if statements? Because between them, I'm updating the number of bullets fired. So this is like, is it so far the bullets fired are less than 10? Let's say it's 9. 9 smaller than 10, yeah, great. Make it 10, and if it's 10, it's not going to update a new one. If it's not smaller than 10. If it's equal to 10, it will. Then same thing with target. If application make target true, who's going to tell it? If something told us that we need a new target because the previous one will report undestroyed, then application.make new target, first of all, false, from true to false. So everything I'm about to do will happen only once and will not loop over and over on all, on each frame. It will instantiate a new target just like before, randomly between left and right, above the floor 0.5 meter, 7 meters away from me, and at the orientation of the room, of the world, even though it'll start spinning right away. It will report to application data that bullets hit plus plus, because the only reason to make a new target is if we hit a target. That print is something that it'll put in the console. This is what developers do to make sure that, we get a message. In JavaScript, we use like alert, things like that. Here it's called print, and I'll show you that to you once we finish the game. This else is an else for this big if here. If bullets fired smaller, but what if it's not smaller? What if it's equal? If the number of bullets fired is equal to the number of bullets max, that means that we ran out of bullets. It means it's the end of the round. Don't make a new target. Don't make a new bullet. Message display instead of empty will be game over. The replay button will become active, and the lighting will be turned off. That's basically the end of update. After that, we got two small functions. One of them is the function that we will attach, and we will do it probably in the next tutorial, to the replay button. So it's sitting here, but it's not attached yet. It's like saying, hey, replay button. Once someone tells you to call the function myReplay, here's what you're going to do. What I want the replay button is also to find out, did we break our own personal records? Is the percentage of this round higher than the last high score? If we got a high score that's higher than the one so far, the king is dead, long live the king. Now the high score will be equal to the percentage. Make that new score the high score. If not, it just won't do anything. It'll just keep the previous high score. And finally, when I press replay, that's the main job of the replay. Scene Manager, remember we imported the class or the library called Unity Engine Scene Manager. Without it, this command is not going to work. Scene Manager, get active scene, name. It's like saying, well, I don't want to remember and I don't want to remember what's the name of the scene. Whatever is the active scene, reload it again. And the active scene is, of course, the one that we're on. So this is the action for the replay button. Find out if we need to update the high score and reload the scene. Finally, the smallest and the simplest function is the function we're going to attach to the exit button, and it's a function called exit game. We're going to attach it to the exit button, and it's a one-liner, application.quit. Usually in Mac applications, we call it quit. In Windows applications, we call it exit. In C#, in Unity, we call it quit. The naming or the label on the button might be exit, but the command has to be quit, and that's the end of the class. Like in the next thing in the tutorial is, of course, to populate all of these fields until it looks like this. So check that between now and the next part. And just like we did before, if you play, it should look like, well, game is not fully functional, so don't try to, fire bullets or anything. All it does is initialize and get ready. And don't forget to stop before the next step. Let's actually, before this tutorial is over, we're going to attach the functions because it's part of the game manager. Attach those functions we just last talked about for the replay button and the exit button. So it says, as shown in video, I will show you in the video. Here's what we do. We go to Unity. We find the replay button. Somewhere in the replay button, it has a room for on-click. That's like called the listener. Hey, what do I need? What do you want me to do when someone clicks on me? I'm going to click plus, and it's looking for an object. It says like, who holds the script that tells me what to do? The game manager. Drag it in. At this point, it starts populating function. I'm going to change it from runtime only to editor and runtime. Runtime is like when it becomes an application. And then under no function, I'm going to go to my game manager. And here are all the functions that are in the game manager. Here is the replay function, my replay. And that's how you attach a function. Find the object that has the script that holds the function. Find it inside that class. Same thing with exit. select it, plus, not runtime, but editor and runtime, tell it that my game manager, it holds the function or the class that has the function, and instead of no function, in the class called MyGameManager, I'm going to tell it your function is exit game. So on click, it'll go to this script and call this function, to this script and call this function. That's it. And that was a rather long tutorial. That was the tutorial for explaining all the parts of MyGameManager. Again, when I play, this is what should show up. One last thing. Let me make it not maximized but focused. If you play and the console shows red errors which cannot be cleared, something is missing. Either a line that was not copied correctly, or you erased it or something, or more likely you forgot to populate all of these fields with the actors that they're going to play those parts. See you in the next part of the tutorial, which is going to be the explanation of the next script.